Welcome to the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show with Larry Lawson. As a former career law enforcement officer and law enforcement educator, Larry focuses on the use of tried and true law enforcement investigative techniques in conducting paranormal investigations. Despite his experience and training, Larry also keeps an open mind to discussions on topics that deal with evidence that are not quite as physical in nature. Paranormal Stakeout guests are professionals in the field of the paranormal and parapsychology, conducting the investigations and research needed to further the cause of paranormal study. Larry advocates an agenda of standardization of structure and training in the field of paranormal investigation and research for the purpose of one day being able to produce the evidence needed to convince a jury of the existence of the paranormal. Whether it is ghosts, UFOs, unsolved mysteries, hauntings or cryptids, no topic is beyond the investigative reach of Larry Lawson and the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show team. Now, here is the host of the Paranormal Stakeout radio TV show, Larry Lawson.
And good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Paranormal Stakeout. I am your host, Larry Lawson, coming to you from the great state of Florida, where we only have two seasons, hot and hotter. And right now it's kind of hot down here. But anyway, welcome back to the show, folks. Little house cleaning up front. Would like to invite you at your leisure to take a look at our website so you can find out about my team and some of the things that we do in the world of paranormal research and investigation. You can check us out at paranormalfbi.com and indianriverhauntings.com. Now, one thing I do want to remind everybody that I really enjoy getting questions and thoughts from you. So please get a hold of me at ghostguy@paranormalstakeout.org. That's ghostguy@paranormalstakeout.org. And if you've got a question, send them on in and we'll talk about it at the beginning of each show and maybe answer some questions. And if I can't find the answer, I'll sure as heck find out where to get the answer. And as you know, in this show, we always bring in folks, experts in the field that cover all topics of the paranormal, and tonight's no exception. Tonight, I have paranormal author Leigh Carroll-Landon. Heather is a book author that we're going to talk about in a little bit, but she started in the paranormal field as a teenager after numerous interactions with a grandfather who had passed years before. She holds a Doctor of Philosophy in Metaphysical and Humanistic Science from the Institute of Metaphysical and Humanistic Science. I'm sorry, and she's also certified as a certified paranormal investigator and EVP technician through the same organization. She is the founder of Exploration Florida, based out of Southwest Florida, but she has spent a ton of time out west where some of her books that we're going to talk about tonight were written. Ghosts of Southern Nevada Ghost Towns, Ghosts and Legends of the Vegas Valley, and Haunted Florida Lighthouses, and a new one coming out the first of the year, the Haunted Florida Ghost Towns. So that's really interesting. With that, I'd like to welcome our guest tonight, Leigh Carroll-Landon. Heather, welcome to the show.
Hi, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Good. And you're over there in the Lakeland area right now where it really gets baking, Lakeland, Florida. So at least I got
kind of cool right now, but we're getting a major thunderstorm. So
yeah, we're starting to get it here too. So Heather, like to introduce you to our guests by having you tell them a little bit about you. Who's Heather Landon? How did you get involved in the paranormal? Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, as you had mentioned, I was a teenager, 17, when I started having dreams and visions of my grandfather appearing to me. And it was in a home that he had never been in because he had died when I was 5 in the home that him and my grandmother had. And we bought this home probably 5 or 6 years after he had passed. And it just kind of was like, why is he here? You know, and I've always had interest in oddball things for the longest time. So it just kind of piqued my curiosity. And back then we didn't have Google. So I spent all my time at the library researching, coming home with stacks of books. And our family vacations, we'd always go to Gettysburg. So I would, that's where I met Mark Nesbitt. And I would, here I am, a young teenager talking his ear off How can this happen? How can that happen? And from there, it just kind of progressed into what it is today. I spent most of my time behind the scenes because everybody thought I was crazy doing what I did, but I still did it. My favorite things to do is researching. I want to try, my ultimate goal is to make this field a true science by actually using scientific methods and developing a way where people don't look at it as a pseudoscience. So I have a long road ahead of me. I know that, but I'm trying to get a lot of people on board to help with that aspect.
Well, yeah, and that's one of my my big desires too, is to gain some structure and some into this field so that we can start collecting evidence that would be widely accepted. Are you actively investigating now?
I haven't since I've moved to Florida because I was supposed to have knee surgery shortly after we moved, and that got postponed, and then I finally had it in December. But I have been going to different locations for the book that I'm writing right now, The Haunted Florida Ghost Towns, and seeing the different, and of course we do little, not full-blown investigations, but we'll do an EVP session, or I'll do a dowsing rod, or my favorite tool is a fidget spinner. So I'll bring that to a location.
Okay. Fidget spinner. You got to explain that.
Yeah, we were hosting a fundraising event for a museum that I used to volunteer for, and we did a ghost hunt one night, and one of the girls came and she pulled out, she's like, "Can I show you something?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." And she pulled out a little fidget spinner, and she's like, "I have these all over my home and the spirits communicate with me through them." And she put it on a rock. We tested to make, because it was an outdoor museum, we tested to make sure it was flat, there was no wind. And she had said that, and it was an area where we had paranormal activity occur before. So she started talking and she's like, "If you're here, can you please spin this?" And it just slowly started spinning. And she's like, "Can you stop it now?" And, and then she started asking yes and no questions, yes, go ahead and spin it. And sometimes it would spin, sometimes it wouldn't. And it was just really interesting. So I ended up going out and I bought a whole bunch of light up fidget spinners in different colors.
Just in case somebody in our audience doesn't know what a fidget spinner is, can you kind of describe that for us, please?
I'm bummed because I might have one in my purse or my bag because I just used it the other day. Yeah, here we go. Yeah, they're the little spinning toys, I guess you would call them, or
a lot of kids use that to kind of help with their attention and whatnot. So
yep. I use it all. I'm working here on the computer and I'll be spinning it underneath the desk.
So that's interesting. Now, where did you use that? What location did you use
we
that
used
at?
it in a mine in Nevada, in Nelson, Nevada. Then I've also used it in hallways when we would do residential investigations. And with the different colors, I could be like, if your answer is yes, spin the blue one. If it's no, spin the red one. And you can just focus a camera on it. And, you'll with the lights in the dark, you can see them moving, which is really neat. I used it here at a local cemetery where we did a photo session. So that was interesting.
One of your goals in the field is to create a system that's falls in line with the scientific method, if I can use that description.
Yep.
How do you see that happening? What is your vision on having that happen?
I know we can't get ghosts to act on command. That's always been the problem. And that's why a lot of people dismiss the scientific method. But just because you're not getting the same answer or the same reaction every time, you might be getting a reaction. So if you're able to conduct the same type of experiment at the same location and, at least get some type of interaction, to me, that's confirming to be able to move on to step 2 type of thing. And it's real tough. I mean, I'm still experimenting with it right now to find more ways to do it. But one way I tell people is to use an EDI plus. Put it in the same place for
EDI plus.
Put it in the same place for 30 days, same time, and measure it for an hour. And then just compare things like, come up with the theory is, does the full moon affect it? And then see if the full moon affected it. Then next month, place it in the same place and see if you get the same results. But it's all about changing how we do things so that way we're repeating the same thing.
Well, now you're going to hit. I think we lost you there for a second. A thunderstorm may have hit. Heather, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay, there we go. The Florida thunderstorms can really play havoc on the internet.
Yep.
have you been able to have any luck repeating an experiment? Have you been able to document it?
We have, but it was not really well documented, but I do have all the evidence to where I can go back through and fully document it, because we started doing experiments. We investigated the same location every time over and over. And we would do, in the one room, we always had interaction with the spirit. And I really wish I did more documenting to try to keep track of that, but I was with a team that really didn't document much of anything. So here I am.
A big problem in our field. Yeah.
So here I am trying to do it on my own, but not getting support from the rest of the team. So I didn't know what they were capturing. But here I've been just trying to track different weather patterns and see where people are getting the activity happening.
Okay. I come from a background, as you know, of law enforcement, which is pretty rigorous training. We talk a lot about this on the show, and I want to get the opinions of as many guests as I can on this issue. Standardization and training. You talked about getting us doing the same thing.
Yep.
And the analogy, and I'm sure the guests have heard this a million times from me, murders happens in Vero Beach and it happens in Spokane, Washington. State laws are a little different. Maybe some procedures are different, but essentially we're going to investigate a homicide here the same way they do in Spokane. Why can't we get to a point in our field where we're all basically at least following the same structure? What's keeping us from doing that?
A lot of things. And I get harassed all the time for my thoughts on this, but I don't care. I share it anyway. It's a combination of things. There's too many paranormal tourists, because on that last team I was on, we had one investigator who finally openly, I kept asking her why she didn't have any evidence ever. And she openly admitted before I left the team that she never checks her digital voice recorder after an investigation. Even on our residentials, she just goes. And
just to get the thrill.
Right. So
see, now I call those paranormal thrill seekers. And I think there's a place in this world. I mean, why do people jump out of airplanes for no good reason? Perfect good airplanes. So people go for the thrill. But if this field of ours is going to advance, we need to come up with a way that we're all singing from the same song sheet.
Yeah. And
how do we do that?
The other issue is I've noticed a lot of people do the same things. It's, I guess they're trying to mimic TV shows is what I'm trying to say. They conduct the same things over and over and over when they're not really experimenting. They're just like, well, I've seen this done, so I'm going to do it this way. We know paranormal, I know a lot of people don't know it because they've never experienced it, but from my perspective, I know paranormal activity exists. I need to progress from the standard, which is of course why I started using the fidget spinner, trying new things to try to get answers. Why does it occur? You can't keep using the same, who are you? Why are you here? How'd you die? Because I'm sure the ghosts are getting sick and tired of hearing that. But we need to, and like you said, standardized training. I get harassed all the time because I took the time to go study at IMHS. Granted, it wasn't a 4-year degree, but it was hard. It wasn't very easy. And he took us through a standardized method of training.
Okay. Well, let me do this. I want to talk a little bit about that when we get back, as well as your philosophies on this field, but we've got to take our first break. So folks, stay with us. I'm with Heather Leigh, talking about ghosts. Stay with us right after these messages.
NASA has confirmed that they have evidence of life beyond Earth.
This discovery is confirmed.
Well, let's see, we've had visitors again. Yeah. Anything worth mentioning?
I filmed 16 minutes on March 5th, 1994, 16 minutes of broad daylight UFO activity.
The other side, the spirit realm, is a parallel dimension which runs, which coexists with ours. And what spirits are doing is they're sending waves of frequency from that dimension to ours.
The government instituted the truth embargo. The government poured disinformation and misinformation into this field, encouraging hoaxes and any other foolishness. It created a truth vacuum that naturally was going to be filled with theories and assertions and other stuff.
The oil oligarchs and the banks and the people who are making decisions that are leading us down the wrong path.
They've undermined the research, intimidated and threatened witnesses. The government is responsible for the fact that the status of this issue is not resolved.
I'm Rob McConnell, host and executive producer of the X-Zone radio show. Now we are set to bring the amazing world of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology to broadcast TV and online video with the development of X-Zone TV. X-Zone TV will now bring our loyal listeners and new viewers face to face with the most controversial and well-known personalities in the field of the paranormal and the science of parapsychology. From scientists to theorists, astronauts to adventurers, celebrities, pundits, advocates, and naysayers, they'll all join our rapid-fire TV broadcast, interactive discussion, and debate. Interest in the paranormal and parapsychology has never been more intense, and it continues to grow. The truth is out there, so take a deep breath and join us as we step into the light. For more information about X-Zone TV, please contact me, Rob McConnell, directly at these coordinates, Rob McConnell at xzonetv.com.
And we are back with my guest, Heather Leigh. Thanks for hanging in there, Heather. Hopefully the rain's not too bad over there yet. We're still getting thunder here. Before the break, we were talking about education in the field of paranormal research and investigation. You did study at the Institute of the organization?
Yeah, Institute of Metaphysical and Humanistic Science.
Granted, that's not a standard or academic university, as I think your website likes to talk about academic degrees and not academic degrees. Yeah. But you still did take the time to study. Mm-hmm. And there are universities that do offer courses in different fields of the paranormal, parapsychology. University of Virginia is one that comes to mind. I know there's a couple up in Canada. How do you think that would help our field? By not only having institutions like where you studied, but also the more traditional universities and colleges. How can that help improve the field?
I truly do believe that if it would help everybody come together, it would put more of a serious nature on the field, not just a something to go out and do on the weekends. Because granted, I do other freelance work for clients, but I view this as my job. I write books. I try to help educate people. I host 2 radio shows and a podcast. So I'm always doing things. And I think that if more people would take the time to study, because I know several people who've gone to IMHS as well, and we work well together. We can communicate easier because the courses also teach how to communicate with clients, how to do different things, how to talk to the spirits properly. And it would make it to where we could not so much have all this paradrama, I think. And it would also put everybody
That's a good way to put it.
Put everybody on the same page as far as how we collect evidence and how we preserve it and how we, save everything.
You're speaking my language. You're preserving our evidence. It's the cop in me. When we go to we take a case to court, we have evidence that's been properly stored, properly vetted, properly examined and analyzed, and then we bring it to court. And this is what we want to do in this field. But you made an important statement. I believe you said something about if getting people to do it. There's a lot of individuals out there that I think would take the courses if we had them. So what is it going to take to get the more academic institutions to spend time on this, to offer these courses?
Yeah, I think it's going to take two things. It's going to be one, it's going to be that we need to not be a pseudoscience, because they don't want to offer a class that's not going to offer anybody a real job type of thing.
Well, I'll debate that in some schools, but that's a
I
story for a
majored in
different day.
communications, and I can't use any of it anymore because of the way things changed.
Yeah.
But the other thing is getting people to want to put the time in, because I actually was communicating with someone. He was messaging me, asking me about IMHS, about the degree program. We were talking in depth about it, even, because it's basically a theology school. So Dr. Kelly set it up. He also trains, priests and, spiritual counselors and all of that. He does that through that same school. And at the end of the conversation, the guy was like, well, thank you for the information, but I don't think I need to go to school to ghost hunt.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, and I responded very nicely. I'm like, that's your decision, but I don't ghost hunt, I research. And I think it's the mentality of the people who are in the field right now.
But that's a huge point that you're bringing up right now, and that goes to my philosophy of a paranormal researcher versus a paranormal thrill seeker. And I'm once again of the belief that there's a place for everybody at the table. But if we're going to get this field to go forward, we have to have education, training, and standards. So what are we going to do to attract folks that actually want to study this, that want to improve the field? I mean, I'm glad you got the training that you did, but what are we going to do to turn the corner?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because right now the people that I know just don't want to put the time, effort, or money into it. Because other people have come back to me being like, oh my God, it's, and it's really not that much money to go where I went compared to a 4-year university. So you have that. And the mentality of the field, I mean, even people who are in the field, they see what they see on TV. They're not here they say they're here to help clients, but half of them go help a client and then they end up calling me or someone else I know because they need help. They got in over their head. They don't know what they're doing. So I just don't think the people in the field want to do it.
You make a pretty general statement there when you say the people. That's a pretty general statement. Are you saying
that the people I come in contact with?
Okay, then why do we do this? Well, if the average ghost hunter, we'll use that term, versus paranormal researcher, most of them are thrill seekers. Why are we even doing this? Why are we even trying?
I'm still trying because I'm hoping that this influx of the thrill seekers and the people who are in it because they think it's cool, and a lot of people who are in it to get the next TV show, realize that it's not going to happen. Then hopefully they drop out, because I've already seen a lot of people who come in gung-ho, this is what I'm going to do, and then a week later you don't see them anywhere. Their Facebook page is taken down. So we got to weed out the ones.
And that happens in a lot of fields. I think part of that is human nature. Now, I tell you where I disagree with you a little bit here. I do think there are people out there, and I got to brag about my gang at the Florida Bureau of Paranormal Investigation. They are an outstanding group of people that truly do want to learn, and and spend a lot of time trying to better themselves. So I think that they're out there. And that's one reason why I don't want to give up. I mean, I spent most of my career on the line as a detective, and this mystery, by God, I'm going to solve it one way or another.
Right.
I'm going to go where the evidence takes me. I can tell you that. So getting away from that a little bit, I want to talk to you or ask you a little bit about your philosophies. What do you think this whole phenomenon is? What are we trying to find out? What is it, in your opinion?
It's tough because we haven't found out yet. I have several different theories on it. One is, of course, the residual hauntings of that. A lot of the energy, something that I'm actually researching right now, is the Superman theory. And it was where quartz is a conductor and a recorder of natural energy. And that's areas with high concentrations of quartz have higher levels of paranormal activity, such as like the Nevada Triangle.
Let me stop you there for just a second then.
Yeah.
If that theory that quartz is collecting energy and at some point is re-energizing that energy and putting out where it can be seen, is that really a ghost, or is that just some sort of natural phenomenon?
Yeah, that still falls under paranormal, but I don't classify that as a ghost per se.
Okay.
It's just like a recording being played. Then another theory that I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to try to research this one, but it's the parallel worlds. And we're all on our own frequency going up and down. And when we see, let's say we're climbing a set of stairs and there's a lady standing in period dress at the top of the stairs. That could be when our parallel worlds cross. When we see that. And, is that happening with the full moon, the new moon, and things like that? So it's almost like an other dimensional. But
as Einstein talked about.
Yeah. And then the other theory is just, they are spirits and they're just waiting and watching kind of thing.
So if we're going to the dimensional topic just for a second, there's a lot of folks now that are trying to connect cryptids, Bigfoot in particular, ghosts, UFOs, all into that dimensional theory. Do you have any thoughts on that?
It's possible because we don't see them every day. We don't, it's very rare if any bodies of Bigfoot have been found. I know I had a Bigfoot expert on my show, and he said that there's none that he knows of, and he actually thoroughly investigates it. So where do they go? Why are we not seeing that? And the same thing with shadow people or even the Hat Man. He could be an interdimensional being that only appears, when needed.
How do you visualize conducting those experiments to try to find that out? Or do you have something you're doing now to try and determine that?
Nothing I'm working on now, but they are on my list of things that I want to start doing. And the best thing, of course, with paranormal activity, the spirits have to come to us. So the best thing to do is to go to a location where they're known to be, and hopefully they come to us. And my investigation technique is I go and talk like they're a human being. I set up my digital voice recorder and the camera, and I just say, hey, this is who I am. If you have any questions, let me know. And then I sit there for a few minutes quietly. And then I just start, talking to them like I'm talking to someone sitting right next to me. How are you? How was your day? What's your favorite thing about being here? And the only way that we can progress is to actually talk to them and get them to communicate back so we can start a dialogue.
So if it's a dimensional entity, as you were theorizing, and I realize it's just one of your theories,
right?
How are they communicating back and forth with us through the?
A lot of times, I'm almost thinking that they communicate with us telepathically, because a lot of people I've talked to that have encountered Bigfoot up close or within a safe distance, or have encountered, the Hat Man or shadow people, they don't physically, they say that they hear them talking, but they don't physically, hear the coming through the ears, if that makes sense. So it's almost like they're thinking of what the other person is saying. And it's really tough because the other thing too is if they are interdimensional, that's where you need all of the different equipment set up to find out if when they appear, is there any changes in the environment, electric static energy, vibrations and all of that stuff, because, and where's their portal? And that's what needs to be discovered.
How do you see frequency and vibration fitting into this theory?
It could be because when I'm trying to figure out the words here, kind of like when a door opens, it would create, a vibration, change in the atmosphere, change in the airflow. And we just got to document everything to see what happens when that door does open. Because could you imagine if the door opens and we find it, what we might see if we go through it?
Do you think it has been seen before and we just missed it?
I think so. I think we're so caught up in our everyday lives that we don't see what's around us. It's a matter of meditation. I call it being one with nature, connecting with, your local environment, knowing what's there and what shouldn't be there. And I think, there's no proof, but there could be people out there that, these missing people, could they have found the doorway and walked through it?
What is that? Rescue 411 or Missing 411?
Missing 411.
Yeah, that's a great example. And certainly we've had, I can tell you a case right now where we had a person disappear. And they just literally just disappeared. We never ever found them again. There was no explanation for it. Well, when we get back, I want to talk to you a little bit more about evidence preservation and a few other things. And we want to start talking about your books too. So, folks, we're going to take a break right now. Stay with us. I've got Heather Leigh-Landon with us, and we'll be right back with some more paranormal talk on Paranormal Stakeout. Be right back.
So I was watching the X Zone TV channel last night when I was abducted by aliens, and they kept repeating to me over and over again, simultv.com, simultv.com.
What's simultv.com?
That's what I asked them. They had it written on the side of their UFO.
How do you spell that?
UFO.
No, I mean simultv.com.
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 Right. simultv.com.
Interesting that you were abducted by aliens in a simultv.com UFO last night.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. Now that you mention it, I remember now last night I was awakened from a deep sleep. My great-grandmother was standing there. She said she'd come from the hereafter to tell me about simultv.com. She even spelled it out for me.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
simultv.com.
simultv.com, sonny boy.
Wow.
Yeah.
Guys, you'll never guess what my psychic guru just told me.
simultv.com.
Exactly. Are you guys psychic too?
Of course.
We all know about simultv.com. simultv.com.
And we are back on Paranormal Stakeout. My guest, Heather Leigh-Landon. I was thinking on the break here about something else that cropped up. And you had mentioned about going to places where there's paranormal activity. Mm-hmm. And a lot of folks do that. I mean, special teams do it. Everybody does it. They like to go to the Stanley Hotel, the Shanley Hotel. They like to go to the different hospitals and sanitariums we have around the country. Do you think it's possible that those places, for lack of a better term, will get fished out? In other words, so many people are in there trying to make contact, it just shuts down.
Yep. Oh yeah, 100% agree with that. Like the Goldfield Hotel, it's people say they get activity up and down. There's reports everywhere. I know people who've claimed that there's been activity. When we were there, nothing.
You got nothing.
Nothing. It was dead silent. And even at Gold Point, we did have activity by the Hangman's Noose and inside the saloon, but the rest of Gold Point was silent.
And where's that at?
That is between Las Vegas and Goldfield.
Okay.
But it's so out of the way. It's the darkest spot in Nevada, and it's actually owned by two brothers who hit it big in Vegas, and they bought the whole town.
Oh, okay.
And preserved it. So it has all the, the original saloon, the post office, and all the original buildings. And you can even stay in the miners' cabins. And people say there's activity all over the place, and it's a hotbed for UFO activity. And outside of the quick EVP session we did at the Hangman's Noose and personal experiences inside the saloon, there was nothing.
Why do you think that is? And because I've had the same experience. We've gone to some spots that were very active. We've had spots that were very active for us and have gone back, and it's been quiet. Now, I grant you that we can't make them come out. It's like fishing. Sometimes they're biting us, sometimes they're not. But after a while, where you don't get anything or you don't hear of anything else going on, you begin to wonder why. What's your theory there?
Well, first off, if you go to like Goldfield Hotel or even, Waverly or anything like that, I personally feel that the spirits look out the window and they're like, oh God, here comes another team. and they all just go into hiding. It is my personal thing. But if you investigate the same location over and over, maybe the last time they didn't like you, so they're not going to talk to you the second time you're there. Or like in our case, we investigated a location in Vegas for our training every month. And every month we went, once they got to know us and we communicated and saw that we were nice and I guess not boring, they kept coming, out of nowhere. I mean, and it was like we couldn't keep up with the spirits some of the times.
How does that theory connect with the dimensional theory of the dimensions crossing?
Right. I think in that aspect, it could be one of those things where if some spirits crossed over and were from another dimension, they're watching us and realize, hey, these guys are cool. When they go back, they're probably bringing friends with. Just like if you go to, an amusement park or a movie that you really liked, you're going to take people with you when you go again.
So this dimensional thing may actually have somewhat of a bridge in it, and they just coming back and forth as they please.
Yeah. Yeah.
We've
They've just figured out how to, and we just don't know how to yet.
I've actually gotten information along those same lines in some of our investigations. So that's interesting that you felt about that too. Now, people want evidence. Let's take the thrill seekers aside, the folks that are going out on the Saturday nights just for the thrill of the bump in the night, and you're actually wanting to put data together to prove or disprove, because I'm a big believer and we go where the evidence takes us. How do you collect your evidence, and what procedures do you use that maybe some of my listeners could use in their work?
We always have digital voice recorders going the entire time. We have some that we use for burst sessions, but we always have one main one that's just constantly running in the background. Of course, you have body cameras. We have static cameras, night vision cameras set up all over the place, because I usually use non-tech tools most of the time, but you can't document with a non-tech tool. So you still have to have all of that stuff running. And it's more or less the hardest part about it is capturing, because I really think spirits have learned when we turn our equipment off. They're like, oh, the red button's off, start talking.
Almost like we just don't want to deal with you guys, and we don't. Yeah, okay,
Right.
Interesting.
Yeah, because you notice activity always happens when you're either setting up your equipment or tearing down,
or when you're not looking.
Right. Yeah. So I think they've learned. So that's why I have actually a keychain that I'll wear somewhere on my person that is actual voice recorder, and it can record up to 20 hours. And I turn it on before I even walk into a location. And I've gotten stuff on there that I haven't gotten on other stuff.
How long do you leave your recorders running?
The ones that we have in the background run the entire time, but then we do burst sessions, and we run those for about 1 minute to 2 minutes, depending on how long of a question we want to ask.
Why do you run them only 1 or 2 minutes?
Just because we want to play them back to see if we get any answers, and that way we can respond and interact accordingly. Because there's nothing worse than doing everything and then on top of it having to listen to 4 hours of straight audio, but then hearing an answer and being like, oh, I could have responded.
And that's something a lot of groups, and that's a protocol that we use. Our recorders run 2 minutes tops, and then we listen to them right away. Because if you do get an answer, you want to respond to it.
Right.
But also, yeah, you're right. If you run it all night, somebody's got to listen to those all night. And that doesn't always get done like it should, even under the best of circumstances.
Yep.
So you've got your recordings, maybe you got some videos, maybe you got some other pieces of evidence. What do you do with it?
I take time when it comes to analyzing like audio. I actually listen to all my audio at least 3 times. I just listen to it, and I don't really write down what's being said, but I'll jot down what I think is being said. And then I'll listen to it again with my eyes closed, because if I close everything out around me, you focus more on listening than you do, if your eyes are open, you get distracted with TV or something else on the computer, and so I do that. And then the third time I go through, I actually focus on the little time breaks that I broke down by cutting clips. And this is for like the longer audio sessions. And then what I do is I have a log where I write down time, what I think was said, and go from there. But then I pass, because my other team members are my husband and my son. So then what I'll do is I'll pass the recordings with just my times, not with what I thought was said, but just kind of times. And he goes through and confirms, yes, I heard something at this time, and I heard something here too. So, we kind of go back and forth on that. And then I clip everything out, label it. Same thing with video. We'll do the same process. Photos, we go through them several times, and analyzing everything. And then what I do is I create an actual, not only log, but I'll create almost like a data sheet on time by time of what happened during the investigation. We arrived at this time, this is what we did, and go through, this. And we also put down like personal experiences in that log. And then if it's a client case,
can't discount personal experiences.
Nope. Even though there's no proof on it, I still put that in there, because sometimes those personal experiences coincide with an EVP.
Well, what do you do with all this? Once you've analyzed it, and you're very thorough.
Mhm.
But what do you do with it? Where do you store it? How do you store it?
If it's for a client, we of course make copies and give them to the client. We give her, a digital thumb drive with all of our, copies and our paperwork, and then a printed copy of everything. And then I do the same thing. I put the case on a thumb drive, and it gets sealed in an envelope with all the printed paperwork, all copies of the photos printed out, as well as, the digital files. And it gets sealed with a case number, and I keep it in my filing cabinet, and I keep a digital copy on the cloud as well, just in case. And it's always there for reference.
Okay. And do you keep it under lock and key, or?
If it's a client case, or like in Vegas, we had several cases that we had to sign non-disclosures for. So those I keep under lock and key, just because, granted, no one else comes into our house right now, but people on our team, but you just never know.
You never know. Okay, very interesting. I want to switch gears a little bit with you here, because you've got a part of your history that I find very fascinating. I want to take a couple minutes to talk about it, and that's your time with the Warren Legacy Foundation. You were the chief administrative officer.
Yes. Yep.
What did that job entail, and tell us about it as much as you can about what that foundation is.
Well, basically, the foundation was founded by Ed and Lorraine Warren's grandson, Chris McKinnell, and he is trying to preserve their legacy by basically teaching other people how to do what they do, or how they investigated. And he says that he wants to train the next generation of paranormal investigators, which is a great idea in concept. My job was I don't want to say I ran the foundation, because he was still in charge, but I did all the behind the scenes work. I set up his the weekly Warren files. I had an administrative team that handled, one person handled all the client cases that came in, another person handled all of the new member applications. And we just basically worked on the inner workings of the foundation and got things to where people needed to go, because we had regional directors and members all across the world. So stuff would come into us, and we would distribute it to the appropriate person in the group.
Now, is that the entire Warren family that was involved in this? Or?
No, it's just Chris. Tony Sparrow, who was on my show a couple months ago, he is their son-in-law. He's married to Judy, who's their daughter, and they own and operate NESPR, which was the organization that Ed and Lorraine Warren founded.
And so they're still active. Are they an investigative type agency? Are they just a data collection agency? Or?
They're a little bit of both. They're more of a, he described it to me as a Catholic research organization, and they're more into helping people. They still collect their data, but they're more in getting people the help they need, whether it's getting in contact with a priest, whether it's getting an exorcism. They do the grunt work to determine what a person needs, and then they get them in contact with the right person.
Okay. Any connection to? I know John Zaffis is related to the Warrens, and his museum. Is that part of the foundation?
No, it's not. John actually is his own complete entity. He is related. His mother was Ed's twin sister.
Ah, okay.
So, but he trained with Ed and Lorraine Warren, and he just kind of went off and started doing his own thing, where he has his museum, the TV shows he used to do. And I talked to him a couple weeks ago, and he's actually still actively investigating and doing work.
Oh, okay. Now you mentioned they also do a lot of training, and once again, we come back to that focal point that we mentioned earlier in the show. What kind of training do they offer?
Well, the foundation, we were actually starting to do online classes that I was in the process of doing, but that I'm not sure if because I left the foundation before that actually took off, so I'm not sure what they're doing from there.
Okay. Well, interesting. I saw that, and I really wanted to ask you about that because the Warrens are, some of the foundation members of what we do. We're going to be taking a break in just about 30 seconds from now, but when we get back, I do want to talk to you about your books, and I'm really curious and wanting to know what kind of research you did to put these books together and how they came together. So when we get back, we're going to talk about them. Folks, we're going to take our last break, and we'll be back with my guest, Heather Leigh-Landon, in just a few minutes. So hang in there with us, and we'll see you right after this break.
You have heard of the X Zone? Now watch it on Simul TV, plus 500 video games, live TV channels, free video on demand, worldwide, and more. Does this sound like tomorrow's television? Well, it is, but you can have it today, right now. It is Simul TV. Simul TV offers what the others only wish they could provide. 15 exclusive channels like X Zone, sci-fi, and horror. We are worldwide. No other provider offers that. 500 built-in video games. No need to have an extra expensive system. We have them included. Free video on demand. Live streaming events from around the world. Interactive online network, and much more. Tomorrow's TV today. Simul TV. Sound too good to be true? Well, it's not. You can have Simul TV today. Sign up at simultv.com. Do it today.
And we are back for our final segment of the show here, and I appreciate you being with us tonight, Heather. A little bit of housekeeping. Remember, you can get a hold of me at ghostguy@paranormalstakeout.org. If you have some questions or thoughts you'd like me to bring up on the show, also check us out at paranormalfbi.com and indianriverhauntings.com if you want to find out more about what we're doing down here in the state of Florida. And certainly if you do search us out, say hi, so I can say hello back. And Heather, how can people get a hold of you?
You can find me at heatherleigh.com or on Facebook at Exploration Paranormal, where my team is on there as well. Or you can find me on my radio show on WLTK DB Radio, which would be at, we just changed the name, at Exploring the Paranormal Show is on Facebook.
Okay, yeah, and then I've been on that show and recommend it, so take a look at it. Now, you're an author, you've been on TV shows, radio shows, you've done all kinds of things, but tell us about your work in the field of literature.
Yeah, I've actually have been a writer ever since I was 16, and our next door neighbor was the publisher for a local newspaper, and they needed a high school sports reporter. And at dinner one day, I was like, well, I can do it, because I was always interested in writing anyway. I was writing poems and a whole bunch of other stuff. And of course, she sent me to a football game, and I knew nothing about football. So I was again at the library researching everything there was on football so I could report on the game properly for her. And that turned into, I was a freelance writer for several local newspapers growing up after that. And through college, I have a degree in journalism, photojournalism, and I started a degree in international communications based on terrorism studies, because that was during the first Gulf War. I'm dating myself here now. With that. And I have several books that I've written, but I just never pulled the trigger on finding a publisher. And we had filmed Real Hunts Ghost Towns with motion picture video out in Nevada. And I had already done all the research, and I was talking to a friend of mine, Peter Haviland, and he wrote for History Press. And he said, well, why don't you talk to my publisher at History Press about your experiences during the filming? And he got me in contact with the publisher. We chatted back and forth, and they loved the idea. And 6 months later, Haunted Southern Nevada Ghost Towns was published.
And after that, you had the Nevada Ghost Towns and Ghosts and Legends of the Vegas Valley. How did all that come about? And tell us a little bit about the research you did to put that book together.
Right. For the Vegas one, it was a lot of, the team that I was with was really big into training, which was great. We were always going somewhere every weekend, practice investigating if we didn't have a client case. So that's where a lot of the locations that I have did the research for it, because I was the type of person that if they said we're going here, I dug deep into the history of the location long before we arrived. So I knew what to ask, what to expect, who to try to reach out to. And I had all that research done. Madame Tussauds, we visited several times, and I talked to the employees. I worked at a museum as a volunteer, and they shared stories, and they also would let me investigate when they were slow. So I was supposed to be volunteering and showing people around, and there I am off in a corner of the mine because it was an above ground mine. And I'd be investigating and talking to the spirits, and they just thought it was funny and loved it. So there was a lot of hands-on, a lot of digging deep. and definitely a lot of personal experiences that were in that second book.
Did you actually do any full-blown investigations of any of these places that you wrote about?
Yeah, McCaw School of Mines, we did a full-blown investigation several times there,
Mm-hmm.
including around the train. They had a train from Area 51 that we had a lot of activity. That train car would put the tri-field meter, it would bury it on the other side, and the minute you walk an inch from the back of the car, it would flatline and be like there's no energy.
Interesting.
So we did a lot of research. There was a little boy that would haunt around there. There was an undisclosed location on the Las Vegas Strip I had to sign an NDA for, but they did allow me to include it in the book as long as I didn't mention their location. So that one we spent all day and all night there. So we had full run of the place for several hours. And one of the parks that we've included, we investigated all night. And then there was one other location that we also had to sign an NDA for, but they luckily allowed me to include that information as well.
Okay. Just off the cuff here, what was the most interesting experience, scariest experience, however you want to put it, that you had investigating and researching for these books?
Yeah, one of the investigations we did was on the Las Vegas Strip. It was near where Tupac was shot. And this wasn't one of our full-blown experiences. Sorry, I have a hair that keeps. It wasn't one of our full-blown investigations. It was just one of those, hey, we're here, nobody's around. Let's do an investigation real quick, because we all had, we all had our equipment with us. And someone had said, towards the end of the shutting it down, someone's like, wouldn't it have been cool if we could have talked to Tupac while we were here? And we have an EVP that says, I'm right here, like almost immediately after they said that. And I thought that was very interesting. Is it Tupac or is it someone else trying to talk? Like, hey, I'm right here. Why aren't you talking to me?
I was actually going to ask that question. How did you know it was
Right.
Tupac?
Yeah, no, we don't know who it is, but it was just very coincidental and very interesting. And then there was one we were at, I was actually setting up, I was doing the kids' craft table at the museum. And like I said, there was a mine and it had a elevator shaft in the back of the mine that was brought from Nelson, from one of the mines out there. And this little kid comes running up to me and he's like, can you please tell the gentleman in the mine, thank you for giving me a tour and talking to me. And the other volunteer and I looked at each other, and there's only one way in, and the emergency door, I would have seen someone coming out of the emergency door because I was right where that was. And we're like, nobody's in there. All our volunteers are out here. And the child was like, well, he was wearing, overalls and he had a hard hat on. And we're like, no one here is dressed like that. So we go running in thinking that there's some crazy person hiding in the mine talking to children. And we turned all the lights on. We checked everything. Nothing was there. Nobody was there.
How do you explain that?
I put it to, I've seen the figure of a man that looks just like that walk from one of the mine caverns and into that elevator and disappear as he gets into the elevator.
Interesting.
Yeah.
It fit the same description and everything.
Same description and everything. So I found that one very interesting.
Well, yeah, and it sounds like you had a little corroboration of it too. How often have you seen a full-bodied apparition?
Full-bodied with full color, I would say maybe a handful of times, but I have seen several dozen shadow figures. Because like one location we investigated, I would see off in the distance every time we would go, same location, which is why I'm not sure if it was an actual apparition or a residual haunt, but it would be two men dressed in period like FLDS attire, and then four ladies dressed in the long FLDS gowns. And the place used to be a former Mormon settlement.
Okay. I want to move back to Florida here now. I want to talk a little bit about the state we're in. And you've written one book already, The Haunted Florida Lighthouses, that's coming out. When's that coming out?
September 11th.
And what's your one right after that?
It is Haunted Florida Ghost Towns.
Okay.
Yep.
Most haunted spots you found in Florida so far?
So far,
in your opinion?
In Johns Pass so far. In Madeira Beach. I love that area. Have so many, I've seen, we'd turn a corner and I would see someone standing there and everyone else would turn around the corner behind me and I'd turn back and the person would be gone and there would be nowhere for the person to go to. We'd be in a store one time and I would feel like someone was tapping me on the shoulder and I'd turn around, nobody was there. and talking to all the employees there, because I've researched John's past to a point, because it's included in my lighthouse book, because they have a faux lighthouse that is haunted by 2 Civil War soldiers. And then I also am going to be including them in my Ghost Town book. And it's just, everybody there has experiences. I mean, things that they can't explain. Some people are afraid to be the closing shift.
Well, where can people find your books?
At Arcadia Publishing or the History Press. And they're also on Amazon, or you can go to Books A Million and request them.
Excellent. Okay, so check those out, folks. Once again, that's Ghosts of Southern Nevada Ghost Town, Ghosts and Legends of the Vegas Valley, and Haunted Lighthouses, Florida Lighthouses. So check that out. Now, in our last few minutes together, Heather, I'd like to get your thoughts on where the future of this field is, and where does the future take Heather Leigh Landon?
The future of this field, I truly do see it. Once we get, like I said, past the paradrama and get everybody on the same page. I mean, we don't even have to be on the exact same page, but just something similar so we can work together and collect data in the same fashion. And for me, I see myself continuing to research, continuing doing books, and coming up and actually finding the time to test my theories that I have.
And the theory you want to test the most is?
Yeah, that's a tough one. They're like my children. Which one's my favorite? I'd love to try to test the one with the parallel worlds, if there was a way we could do that.
And we're kind of circling back to equipment here. What do we need to do to improve the equipment, instruments that we use to get the scientific data? Any thoughts on that?
My thing is we need to stop using equipment that's designed for paranormal investigating, because those tools are basically, I don't want to say they're designed to trick us, but they're designed to entertain to a point. Depending on who designed the piece of equipment, you can't always trust what you're getting. You know, like the ghost apps on the phone. When people come to me with videos from the ghost app, I just kind of want to cringe.
Well, I would agree with you, but tell me why you think.
Several different things. One, your phone has, even if you put it on airplane mode, things are registered in your phone. And if you use the kind of like the Anomalous type app on the phone, it's going to register where you're at and give you things. You know, it's going to search the internet for things that it thinks you want to hear, and for that area. The ghost app that does the SLS camera, that's going to map out anything that looks like a human. I've seen it. It's mapped out my wall. It's I get it to play around with it so I can explain to people what it does. Someone put it up against a tombstone, and all of a sudden the entire cemetery was haunted by these little people, because every tombstone. Yeah.
So what you're suggesting is that the internet perhaps plays with us and gives us the information they think they want us to have. Is that what you're saying?
Exactly, and that's what AI is going to do to us.
That's a topic I'm going to eventually get on the show here. Any other final thoughts? What would you want to tell somebody just getting into the field?
Do your research, find someone who you know and you trust to be a mentor, and don't take everything, I don't want to say for granted, but don't think everything that you see or hear from another team, show, or internet is the end all be all in this field. And just do you,
and study your history.
Yes.
Know your history.
Yes, that helps Heather, a long way.
we are out of time, but I want to thank you very much for being on the show. Appreciate you being here. And folks, our time's about up. So stay safe. We'll see you next week. And until then, we'll see you on the other side. Have a good night, folks.